So thank you very much for joining today. This is the ATMA, Asia Talent Mobility Alliance webinar series, and today we are doing an update on Indonesia and the Philippines. So thank you very much for joining. Okay, so I'm imagining that a lot of you know about ATMA. ATMA is an organisation that exists to enhance the innovation and development of talent mobility in Asia. You can see on the screen there a little bit more about us, our mission. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail today. And you can also see at the bottom of the slide the foundation partners. So we're very grateful to the support of Bravo, ECA International, and Relocating Asia and Relo Japan, who are the foundation partners and have been a big financial supporter of getting ATMA up and underway. On the next slide, here we have the ATMA board members. So you're welcome to reach out to any of these members if you'd like to know more about ATMA. Most of the people on the screen here have been involved with ATMA for 2, if not 3, going on 4 years to try and to get what we're doing up and underway. So they've been a big part of ATMA up until this point. So thank you to the ATMA board members. Please do reach out if you would like to know more about that. Without further ado, we're going to get on to today's topic, which is an update on the Philippines and Indonesia. We're going to go into immigration, housing, education, some cost of living, and the global mobility landscape. It's a pleasure for me to introduce you to today's guests. We have Farah from Noble Asia. So Farah, thanks for joining us today. We have Tim Denny, who comes today from the Philippines. So thank you, Tim, for joining us today. And also Karen from the Philippines, from my organisation at Relocating Asia. So thank you very much to the three of you for making the time today. I'll have them introduce themselves when they come on in a second. I'm going to start with the first couple of slides today, which are based on cost of living. So firstly, for the Philippines, I don't have any cost of living percentages to share with you, although I was talking to Tim just before and he had done a little bit of research and was saying that I think the inflation rate is around 3.5% at the moment in the Philippines. ECA International, who's the foundation partner who I just mentioned previously, has kindly provided us with the cost of living data today, so thank you very much to them. But from the information that they've provided, the inflation rate in the Philippines is a little bit higher this year in 24 compared to 23. And I think Karen had mentioned that food prices especially have been rising quite quickly in the Philippines. So still a bit of an inflation problem there in the Philippines. If we go to the next slide, cost of living in Indonesia. Robust economic growth in Indonesia means that the inflation rates are still quite high in Indonesia as well. Most pronounced in tourist locations and those locations that are producing or manufacturing. And once again, similar to that of the Philippines, the inflation rates are higher in 2024 compared to that of 2023. So still a bit of an inflation problem there in Indonesia, although Indonesia, cost-wise, is a lot cheaper than most, a lot of locations of origin, such as Japan, America, Australia, Singapore, etc. So just a little bit of insight in there to the cost of living in those two countries. I'm going to now go to Farah, and maybe she can introduce herself as well for her perspective on inflation in Indonesia. So Farah, over to you.
Thank you, Steve. So hi, everyone. I'm Farah from Noble Asia. We are based in Jakarta and Bali. So, of course, yes, you are correct. We do have inflation over the past years. It's about 3% in our country. But as you see in this slide, for the monthly expenditure for the expats, is actually still relatively low, I would say, because the numbers here that I present is actually including the cost will cover the monthly utilities, the gasoline they have to pay, the car rental, the salary for drivers, their maid, and sometimes nannies, the groceries, the children extracurricular activities, and also dining out, once a week. However, please note that the cost of alcohol in Indonesia is significantly higher compared to their own countries, which I don't think should come as a surprise because we are the biggest Muslim country in the world. And, it really depends on their lifestyle. So this is not including in their entertainment budget. Depends on, obviously, especially the single expatriate, where for them, frequent nightlife, not only on the weekend, has been the biggest temptation to spend money in the city, especially in Jakarta. Yeah, so.
Okay, well, that's good to know. Since I like a little drop myself, I guess I won't be going to Indonesia. Okay, so we're going over now to the Philippines. So I'm going to turn over things to Tim. Who's going to talk to us mainly about immigration over these next couple of slides. So Tim, over to you, and maybe you just want to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Steve. So, so my name's Tim Denny. So I've been involved in global immigration, corporate immigration and global mobility for 25 years. So I'm starting to feel a bit old, but now I'm living in the Philippines for the last 8 years ago, working for EOS Global Expansion, which is an employer record firm. So we were involved in immigration advice and obviously global mobility advice. So we've already touched on the cost of living. So we'll move into the immigration landscape because there's been a few things happening at the moment. Now, obviously, the most common visas in the Philippines are the special work permit, which is for people coming in for around 6 months. So that's a pretty standard visa. But the most popular visa for the long-term assignments in the Philippines is the 9G pre-arranged employment visa, which is basically valid from 1 to 3 years and requires sponsorship by a firm in the Philippines. And there's been a few recent developments when it comes to the 9G visa. Firstly, advertising came in a few years ago, but the advertising requirement is actually being more strictly enforced at the moment. Also, in September, the Bureau of Immigration actually came up with a new policy where if a 9G holder has been promoted or changes job titles, then the employer must file a notice of promotion with the immigration authorities. And following that, you actually have to do a new 9G extension application. So a lot of firms have actually missed that, but that is actually important at the moment, and it's actually being quite rigorously enforced. Another thing which is happening at the moment too is that previously the authorities were quite lenient when it came to the short work permit, the special work permits, in terms of actually what's basically required. You're allowed to have it for 6 months in a 12-month period, but previously firms were actually able to get like 9 months within a 12-month period without any problems. But now that's being rigorously enforced. So 6 months is the absolute maximum. And if you go over that, then you have to do the 9G visa. A new development as well is the Philippines is finally looking into a digital nomad visa, which will be nice to attract some remote workers and freelancers to live in the country. So that was actually first promoted in June 2023, but being the Philippine way, it still hasn't been implemented, but we're expecting it to come into effect in 2025, fingers crossed. Okay. But there is some challenges in the Philippines though, because we have to remember everything is pretty much still paper-based here. So it is a pain to put all the paperwork together. There's very few applications that are electronic, with the majority for expats being paper-based.
And I do believe the Philippines, it is quite a lengthy process, and I believe that can only be done once people are in country. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's true. So Philippines is quite unique, where people will enter on a visitor visa and then convert to either the 9G visa or get a special work permit attached to the visitor visa. The special work visa, that's quite quick to process, but the 9G visa can take months. But what you can do with that, you can get a provisional work permit whilst it's being processed, but then you have to ensure that the visitor visa is maintained at all times. So yeah, it's a bit of a bureaucratic process.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you. Is that so? We've been through all those policy changes with these.
Yeah, so with Indonesia, right, as you know, we just had the inauguration of our new president. So I'm sure that there will be a lot of policy changes in the next year. But so this is what I gathered. What I really want to highlight is Tim was talking about everything is paper-based in Philippines, while in Indonesia, the past couple of years, the government has significantly come a long way and actually transformed the system into fully digital system and making it really, really easy for the expats. Very short waiting time. All appointments are booked via online, and also less paperwork. Less paper-based, and the visa option during the Jokowi president era has grown, and then it has actually tailored for a lot of different industry and different needs for the companies. And one of the most exciting changes that we see in 2024, although it was already introduced in 2023, was the official launch of the Golden Visa, which is a program that allows the foreigners to actually, secure a 5 to 10 year stay in our country with a minimum investment of $350,000 for 5-year stay and a $700,000 US for the 10-year stay for individuals. And this investment can actually be made in government bonds, public shares, or deposited, and also with buying a property. I would say that this really reflects Indonesia's commitment to becoming more accessible to foreign investors and also talent. And then the common challenges that we have because of fully digital transform is actually occasional website downtime and some hacking problem in the system. We had that, which means that, the delays is because of the system, and sometimes we can't do anything and just wait until the system gets back online. I would say, that's one of the major highlights of the landscape in Indonesia.
So the golden visa is it actually golden? Do you get a gold card or something, or?
Well, you really have to, in order for them to approve your visa, you really have to transfer that money first. Yeah, so there's no way. And the money is actually audited by the government. They want to see where, you can't just Steve want to have a 5-year and then you put $250,000 and then transfer it back somewhere else. So they actually really have a control over where you put the money as long as it's still in the country.
Okay. So it can't just be in a bank account, right? It needs to be invested in something within
Indonesia. Yeah. Correct.
All right, thank you. Okay, so now we're moving over to some housing updates. So Karen's going to start on these for the Philippines. So Karen, maybe you want to just introduce yourself as you do. Thank you.
Yes, hi, I'm Karen Zuluaga. I'm with Reno Network Asia in the Philippines, and we'll be discussing housing. So according to the latest census taken in 2020 during the pandemic, the most notable nationalities of expats and with work permits include Chinese, Indian, American, Korean, and Japanese nationals. Most of these expats were based in Metro Manila, followed by the Calabarzon area in the south of Manila. Most of these expats are employed in the manufacturing sector, and the majority work in administrative, executive, and managerial positions. So the preferred areas for expats in Metro Manila are BGC, Makati, and Ayala Alabang. So Bonifacio Global City in Taguig City, better known as BGC, is a commercial, residential, entertainment development where many of the multinational companies are currently located. Properties here are comprised mostly of condominiums, though there are gated villages just outside of BGC itself. BGC is sought after by many expats because of the close distance to their offices as well as to the international schools that are located in BGC as well. So there are many small parks, shops, plenty restaurants, salons, spas, groceries, malls that can be found within walking distance or a short ride away. Because it's the most popular area for now, prices can be quite expensive, but there are many available properties in different price ranges. Makati City would be the oldest of these expat areas, but still with many nice new and newly renovated properties as well. There are also gated villages nearby. Salcedo and Legazpi villages would be the commercial and residential areas with high-rise condominiums. And the gated villages with houses and duplexes include Forbes Park, Das Marinas Village, Urdaneta Village, San Lorenzo Village, and Bel Air. There are several malls, groceries, shops, spas, salons, restaurants, gyms, etc., as well as weekend markets within easy access to these areas. And lastly is Ayala Alabang. It is the premier gated village at the southern part of Metro Manila. There are also few condominiums outside of the village, but the village itself has many conveniences not found in many other gated villages, such as a lot of parks, tennis courts, basketball courts, swimming pools, groceries, a church, and even its own Starbucks. But because the village is large, you will need a car or take one of their e-trikes to the mall outside the village where there are groceries and other conveniences. So as a house for the housing update, currently we are at a landlord's market. There is low availability for the good, nice new properties. Anything that becomes available goes very quickly, and the landlords know this, so the prices tend to be higher for these properties. For the lease terms, typically a lease is either 1 to 2 years. The landlords will usually require the first year to be guaranteed, meaning there will be no lease termination during the first year. A diplomatic clause of pre-termination is allowed starting in the second year. The refund of the security deposit is typically 60 days after the end of the lease. It is usually a long process because the landlord will come back with claims for charges to be made against the security deposit, and we will have to discuss, negotiate, and approve the charges. Utilities are not included in the lease, as these are paid monthly based on actual consumption. And any agency or realtor fees are paid by the landlord. Okay, for current challenges, typical expat leases, those in popular expat areas and those that typically lease to expats are paid 1 year upfront. Local leases, however, usually are the lower cost properties and are rented to locals mostly, can be paid monthly or with post-statement checks for the full term. As mentioned, costs can be high in these popular expat areas, especially the newest higher end buildings. There are unfortunately no reliable property websites, as most are contain old property ads that are left on the site intentionally by the listing agent to attract more clients. And during the pandemic in particular, when people could not travel, we were often asked to do virtual tours, but data accessibility can be limited in some areas, so making this quite difficult. And apartments typically come furnished, and houses typically come semi-furnished with major appliances such as air conditioners, refrigerators, stove, oven, washer, and dryer.
There's quite a difference between sort of local, and how locals pay their rent and how expats need to pay their rent, right? And
yes,
sometimes that can cause a bit of confusion, correct?
Yes, I think there is a mistrust maybe with the foreigners because they might come in and not pay, so they require the leases paid upfront. And typically, if they come from multinational companies, the landlords know that the lease can be paid upfront.
It's just if you ask the local person, about rental practices, they will probably tell you about the local market, right?
Yes, then they will say, no, of course not, the lease doesn't have to be paid 12 months.
Just need to be careful about.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So moving on to Indonesia, so back to Farah to speak to us about how things are going in Indonesia and the housing market.
I mean, it's very similar, yeah. I mean, I'm happy to know that, in terms of security deposit, I guess this is all over the world where, when the money has to be returned back to the company, owners suddenly say, oh yeah, everything is broken and you need to replace everything. So that also happens in Indonesia. But I would say, in 2024, rental prices are stabilizing, and we had a really good year in 2018 and 2019. It was a landlord's market. And then we have, obviously, all over the world, it was COVID. And then, of course, it was a tenant market. But it has been stabilizing and seems to be moving closer right now to pre-COVID era. Some of the owner that was, who managed to renovate and reinvest, if they had the money, they reinvest in their property, they actually have successfully increased the price of rental for 30 to 40%. Compared to the pandemic rates, not pre-pandemic rates. So it's still the same. However, of course, these price hikes are mostly in high demand areas for expats, and also very few luxury apartments. Very proudly say that Jakarta has MRT now, although it's only one line. But this one line really makes a difference for a lot of expats, because their offices or the embassies are within that first line of MRT. So there's a lot of inquiries of, asking for houses or apartment walking distance to the MRT stations. And then we're also seeing a shift in the expat community with more arrivals from the Asian countries. I mean, previously we have a lot of Indians as expats, but nowadays we have a lot of coming from South Korea as well as China. I think it's largely due to their investment interest in Indonesia. There's a lot of projects coming from South Korea and also Chinese company. For rental terms, I guess the Filipinos, the landlords, they have heard that in Indonesia everything is paid in advance. So as it works, they can have the money up front. We have always had rental paid in advance. For the condominiums or luxury apartments, it has always been minimum 12 months. During COVID, we do have 12 months contract and paid monthly, even if it's not service apartment because owner was desperate. But now they're back with, minimum 6 months, 12 months lease, pay all up front, and then for landed houses, 24 months pay up front. Some are quite flexible when they know that their houses are not so, well located, or the condition of the houses is not very well maintained. They are offering shorter terms for 12 or 18 months rental with payment up front. And we do not have early termination in this country. It is not acceptable unless you are a diplomat or working for a non-profit organization with a diplomat passport as well. That has to be attached in the contract. And then, yes, more likely the owner will accept the early termination. But sometimes it also has to be guaranteed at least 6 months or a year you'll stay in the country. And then another trend that we're seeing right now is that the housing budget is very much decreasing after COVID, during COVID, after COVID, both in the private sector and also among the embassies. So a lot of the countries, I guess it's globally, it's crisis, right? So we have seen at least about 10 to 15% minimum of, budget cuts from the companies as well as embassies. Overall, I think it's still very much a tenant market rather than the owner's market. Immigration data actually shows that around 46,000 working visas were approved in 2023, compared to approximately 90,000 working visas before COVID in Indonesia. So this means that there are still plenty of available apartment units, and the limited supply of good quality housing here that I mentioned is for the expat standard houses within the popular budget of around 2,500 to maximum 3,500, which is an average budget for the expat. We have a shortage on that. But many of the well-maintained house now, because they have, reinvest their money and renovate it, they all start at about $4,000 to $4,500, which is often it's above the average of the expat budget. So I don't put challenges here in the slide, because the challenge is that the current challenge is we need more expats. So how do we solve that?
Right. So I guess you want to get back up to those 90,000.
Yes, for sure.
90,000 numbers before.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much for that update. Very comprehensive. So we're now going to move on to education in Indonesia. So we get to take this slide as well. How are things with schooling these days?
Okay, so because we do not have a lot of expats coming, especially not family planning scheme, mostly are actually single or young couple without kids. The selection of the well-established international school hasn't changed much, I think, but we are seeing growth in early education options, especially in the expat-friendly areas. There are a lot of new options of how high-quality teachers and also curricula, and which is a great news for the families with young children. And for the popular international school, such as Jakarta Intercultural School and Business School, and also North Ambia School, they do have some waiting lists for the early age. Yeah, but actually, other than that, because the school need the students, right? So there are no, they cannot say it's only a foreign nationality school only for the international school. So most of the schools in this international school are actually Indonesian. Myself, our kids goes to German School International in Jakarta, and 70% of the students are actually Indonesian. So in other international schools, they do have, let's say, Indonesians are 40%, and then it's divided by, other nationality. They need, obviously, I understand that the school need to maintain the enrollment. And then lastly is that what we've seen here is that the fees keep on increasing approximately about 5% annually for the international school.
So no big changes right now in terms of waiting lists and that sort of thing for international schools, apart from
No, it's the same.
So kind of like the housing market, I guess, less expats, less families at the moment. So until that comes back, I guess things are not so bad for education in Indonesia. Is that correct?
Well, the Indonesian can afford the fee, so it's fine for the school.
And so do those Indonesian students, do they need to have a US passport or foreign passport or anything like that in order to send their kids to an international school, or can anybody send their children?
No, anybody who can afford to pay the fee,
right,
they are allowed to be to enroll in the international. Because right now the trend for the rich Indonesians, especially, they would like to send the kids to Ivy League. And going to this international school is a wonderful way for them, to go to the university.
Okay, so back to Karen now. I just want to talk about education in the Philippines. So thank you, Karen.
Yeah, so some of the challenges that we face in the Philippines for our international schools. So the schools are limiting third-party involvement in the application and interview process, which requires families to manage bookings and applications online themselves. So typically, the most we can assist in is helping them secure some documentation or making the initial introduction to the school. But other than that, they need to deal with the school directly. High cost.
It's becoming quite common, right across Asia actually. So, PII and that sort of thing, and personal information and that sort of thing, making that area of things a little bit difficult for us. Service providers to be able to sort of help very much.
Yeah. So compared to local schools, the international schools cost is very high. There are, unlike in Indonesia, but I would say maybe 80% locals in some of the schools. But I heard that the schools are planning to manage that and lower the locals to allow more foreign students to come in. Okay. There's also limited availability or wait list in these schools. A lot of these schools, for example, International School Manila would prioritize American schools, or American nationals and American companies. British School would do the same for British nationals and Commonwealth citizens. So there is always a wait list. And the preferred schools are ISM Manila and British School Manila, or BSM, located in BGC. And for the southern part of Metro Manila, that's Brent International School.
Okay. Understood. So the waiting list, does that go more by sort of grade level, or is it sort of right throughout the schools that you're finding that?
Yes, it depends on the grade level and of course the timing, because they can only announce that there's an available slot once the term is over, and that those who need to leave or have to leave have already gone. So yeah.
Okay. So is there cut-off times each year for admissions and that sort of thing, or they take admissions year?
They take admissions year round, but I would suggest 2 months ahead of the scheduled arrival, at least, to submit your application.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to go back to Tim now, who's going to talk to us a little bit about global mobility trends in the Philippines, from what he is seeing through his company recently. So Tim, back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. It's probably similar to what's happening across the globe, to be honest. Obviously, what's happened after COVID is the remote worker influence. So there's still a large number of workers in the Philippines who are demanding remote working. And I'm one of them. I'm now a remote worker. So I was fortunate enough that in my company, after COVID, we went remote. And so I decided not to live in Manila, so I didn't have to fight the traffic anymore. But based on the remote work pressure, that's where the actual the momentum is coming for a digital nomad visa. So we do expect that to be implemented in 2025.
Okay. Yeah, and I imagine, the Philippines would be quite, if it's easy to get hold of that, so that might make the Philippines quite an attractive location.
Yeah, there's some nice beaches here to work on, Steve.
Yes, yeah.
But also, and this is similar to what's happening across the globe, a localization of expat packages, because gone with the high cost expat packages from 10, 15, 20 years ago. So basically, most companies we work with now, we're seeing lower perks. We're seeing companies encouraging or not enforcing localized contracts, localized packages. So the perks are far less than what they were before COVID. And I think that's common across the globe.
Right. Okay.
And also we're getting the regional hubs, like Philippines has basically, you've got, people might argue with me, but there's probably three areas of investment for international companies in the Philippines. It's Metro Manila, Cebu, and Clark City. And we're seeing that it's continuing to be focused on those areas, probably to the detriment of other areas of the country. But these areas are continuing to have investment incentives. They're continuing to have a large inflow of expats into these three locations. And So it's an unfortunate way, it's not more diversified, but we're seeing it's becoming very centralized.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Thank you. Back to Farah now for some global mobility trends from Indonesia.
So while waiting for the Philippines to launch their remote working visas, we have a lot of digital nomads and also remote workers in Bali, in the Canggu area, in Nusa Dua, or even in Ubud. So yes, during the COVID era, and if you've seen what is happening to Bali, it's quite remarkable actually that the influx of people living in Bali during COVID, and again, still even now, and it has significantly raised the price of property for rental, also for buying in Bali by 1,000%, I would say. We also, because of this, we are also opened our office in Bali because there were, offices in Jakarta who has the policy of 100% working from home. The expat then say, okay, I'll rather than work in Bali instead of being stuck in the small apartment in Jakarta. So that was, there was a lot of it, but I think right now it's coming back that the companies want them to come back to Jakarta, especially we have a lot of mining company, oil and gas as well. They have to meet the government officials, and the government officials are located in Jakarta. Although we still have a lot of digital nomads and remote workers applying visas for Bali, which has nothing to do with business in Indonesia. And then we are also seeing, I think it's also the same, all over the world, that's shifting in the localization of expat package, right? Although it's not really expat because our minimum wage here are very low. So, but it's expat standard package for like an executive level, Indonesian local executive level. Where we see that there's minimal or even no support for the destination services provided by the company. And also a lot of companies are choosing to offer their assignee their expat lump sum package. So they have to set their own budget and manage their own expenses. And then the last one is the shift from corporate leases to private rental. So a lot of these expats are now taking on their own housing arrangement, making contracts under their own name rather than the corporate name. Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite a common thing around the globe, I would imagine.
Yes.
There were a lot more corporate contracts that when I first started sort of looking at Asia, there was a lot more corporate contracts back then than we see now. So different trend in Asia, yes. Okay, well, thank you for those insights. And that kind of brings us towards the end of the presentation here today. So we'd be happy to take any questions that the audience may have. I don't have any questions at the moment. Anything that has come in. Well, I do just have one that has come in now, actually. So thanks for this insightful presentation. My question is about housing in the Philippines. Is the preference of landlords still to sign corporate leases, or do you see more private leases now signed by expats and not big corporates? Aaron, maybe you can...
Yeah, the preference is definitely personal leases, and it has been, at least in my experience. But the government is getting more strict with paying taxes on these leases. So we are seeing slowly the shift towards corporate leases, but it still is primarily personal that's preferred.
So just to understand, would there be any sort of difference to the company or to the assignee, between a corporate lease and a private?
Yeah, well, corporate lease is signed by the company, and it would be subjected to the 12% VAT and 5% withholding tax.
Right. And of course, private contracts are not subjected to that. Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, that's good to know. Perhaps, Farah, you able to, same question really for Indonesia. I mean, is there any difference between corporate and sort of private, contracts in terms of the cost to the company or the cost to the individual?
Well, actually, in Indonesia, you are obliged to pay a 10% withholding tax on your rental property, right? And the VAT is really depends on the owner. If the owner, they have to have a certain amount of income to be able to collect the VAT in Indonesia. So there's most of the landlords or private owners, they don't have to collect VAT. But actually, this 10% withholding tax is applied to anyone who has a rental property. So they nowadays actually prefer the corporate contract because the company is actually paying for the withholding tax, whilst I guess a lot of the other landlords, the naughty ones, they will try somehow to maybe not pay the full tax of this 10% from the whole rental amount. I don't know how they can do that. But and also with the private contracts versus the corporate one, actually, I feel like it's actually better for the company, because if something happened with the expat, if they, they have to return back to their country or they resign or whatever, they can actually still use the apartment or the house for the next assignee, right? Whilst within, if it's a private contract, nobody's really responsible for the expat. And for the expat itself, if they leave the country, yes, you can always sublease the apartment, but there's nobody right now. It's really little expat coming compared to the property, oversupply property. So, yeah.
So I guess both for the Philippines and Indonesia, where you are paying very large sums of money in terms of rent in advance, maybe corporate contracts are, a little bit, in terms of risk of, people having to go home early. At least they, if they're under the company, they can be used for another assignee. Whereas a private contract, once the contract is cancelled, that's it, and you lose whatever rent you've paid. So I guess that's worth thinking about. We do have another question here. Is it common to see local to local transfer to Philippines from other countries, or a long-term assignment is still the most common assignment type? So what have you been experiencing recently, Karen?
Local to local, meaning moving around in the Philippines?
No, local contract to local contract. I imagine it's a local employment contract or local employment contract in the Philippines.
Switching jobs.
Yes, but on a local contract. So on a local contract in the US, and then on a local.
Yes.
Philippines.
No, I haven't seen anything like that here. Yeah, if they come in on a local contract, they will stay for 2-3 years and then they'll move on. They don't typically stay behind.
Okay, so there's permanent moves are not as you. Okay. So it seems that the long-term assignment is still the most common assignment type.
And also, it's very hard to transfer to a permanent residence on corporate grounds.
Oh, it is hard to?
Yeah, very hard.
Okay. Are you able to speak a little bit more to that?
Well, it's effectively impossible. You've got to actually apply on your own basis as a retiree visa or a spouse visa.
All right, I see. Okay.
So you can extend your work visa, technically forever, but that obviously doesn't give you residency.
Right. Okay. All right. That is good to know. I'm just seeing if there are any more messages. I don't think there are. We're at about, what are we? 48 minutes past the hour. So typically we try to keep these things to around 45 minutes. So we're kind of right near the end now. So unless someone in the audience has a very last question, I'd like to thank very much our panelists today. So thank you, Tim, to Karen and to Farah for making the time today. I hope this has been insightful for everybody. And here at ATMA, we will continue to do these country updates. We have another one coming up on Singapore and Malaysia very shortly. We also have an event on storytelling in the near future as well. So please look out for those, and we'll continue to try to bring a variety of events your way. We do have our ESG committee in Singapore with an in-house event on November the 26th in Singapore. So please look out for that one as well. So thank you very much for everybody's time today. Yes, I hope we can do this together again sometime soon. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.